CPF retirement sum now. So after they charge all of us in court, then now they call it the CPF retirement sum. So people will not search for CPF minimum sum, and people will not realize that actually long ago, there are already people who spoke up against CPF system and say that the government needs to return us our money. And it's not just about returning us our CPF money. It's also returning us the interest that they have earned using our CPF. They need to return us the returns as well. And just like how the CPF system, they say that when we sell our HDB, we need to give back accrued interest. The government didn't give us the accrued interest that they have earned for the numerous years whereby they only pay us 2.5%. And yesterday the AGC sent me letters saying that I need to pay them like 5 to 6% interest on top of the $22,000. So they are now asking for about $25,000.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I also want to add this. You know, when you file a writ in court, all right, you can ask for interest on the claim. And the interest given these days by the courts is 5.33% a year. All right? But why is it that CPF only gives you 2.5% a year? Now, think about it. You have this sum of money sitting in CPF every year, all right? Inflation now is how many percent? 5%? 6%? It means that every year your money is sitting there, you are losing money, right? You are losing to inflation.
Okay, Hui Hui. I think yesterday or day before yesterday, if you read the newspaper that the subscription is, I think, plus people okay. The big news was, in the Forward Singapore conversation, they talked to more than 14,000 people, and then they come up with 3 main themes. So the next stage is they're going to talk to some more people to figure out in these 3 main themes, okay, what exactly they're going to try to do to solve the problem of these 3 main themes. Now I know you don't subscribe to newspaper, right? So you know what are these 3 main themes?
What are they?
Okay, means you don't know lah. Okay. The 3 main themes after 14,000 people being engaged in the Forward FG is number 1, fairness. Number 2, inclusiveness. Number 3, giving back. Okay, I shall repeat. 3 main themes: fairness, inclusiveness, giving back. I read the very long articles in this newspaper, and of course, when you talk about fairness, inclusiveness, giving back, a lot of things they're talking about jobs, jobs need to retrain, jobs need to reskill, and all that. Okay, but what I found very strange was, there was not a single word mentioned after 14,000 people went through this exercise, and all this about fairness and inclusiveness and giving back and all this right about jobs. Not a single word talk about competition from non-Singaporeans, right, with Singaporeans for jobs.
Exactly. Don't you think that if you want to talk about fairness, the number 1 priority should be fairness for Singaporeans in the job market? And I'm telling you, there is no level playing field. That playing field these days is tilted heavily in favor of the foreigners. All right? And I think in PV, Hui Hui, more than anyone else in the whole of Singapore, has brought out the statistics. And the statistics are so disastrous. All right? I wouldn't even try to repeat them here. They talk about job growth all these years. Hui Hui has comprehensively shown how less than 10% of those job growth go to true Singaporeans, true blue Singaporeans. Yeah? And you tell me how is it fair? You tell me how is it fair that a new citizen, 30 and above, does not have to serve NS, but that true blue Singaporean has to serve NS and has reservist liabilities till he is, I think, 40 now. You know, in my days, my reservist liability was till 50. You tell me that is not tilting the playing field against the true blue Singaporean? Yeah? Where is the fairness in that? Why is Lawrence Wong not pursuing that? I am sure people in Forward Singapore would have brought that up. That is why, you know, I don't treat this Forward Singapore conversation seriously. I think it is a joke, all right? There are far more important issues. They don't want to talk about it, but they label it under 3 generic categories: fairness, inclusiveness, and giving back. My friends, let's talk about housing. Let's talk about jobs. Yeah, let's talk about cost of living. Aren't those the most important things for Singaporeans? Housing. Aren't the young upset that public housing is now way beyond that? They have to wait how many years to get a flat? And you know what can happen in those intervening years when people are waiting? Relationships can break down. And then people are starting families later in life. What does that affect? It affects your total fertility rate, doesn't it? You know, Singaporeans are producing less and less of themselves, and yet our population keeps expanding. Why? Because we keep importing foreigners.
And really, in the parliamentary sitting last Monday and Tuesday, they had, I think, a lot of debate about HDB, okay? And the conclusion, as usual, is that HDB is affordable. You say HDB flat, right? You got anything to say?
So the AGC questioned me over my HDB flat as well. Then questioned me over where I stay specifically as well. Then after that, I declared in court, I was like, oh, the HDB is 200k for a 3-room flat in Singapore. And it is still under loan. Then they asked me how much, I'm like, 200k. And it has to be paid for 25 years. So in the letter from the AGC yesterday, the AGC told me, I need to pay the money or else there will be interest and they will keep sending me letters forever. And I was thinking, if Singaporeans can pay for a house that they are living in for 25 years or even longer for people who actually who are too old to get a flat, then what is the AGC sending me letter for the rest of my life going to be? And just because I pay the AGC right now, does it mean the AGC will stop harassing my family and I think the Prime Minister nephew has answered it very perfectly, is that the AGC will never stop their persistent and continuous political persecution against me. So I just have to continue. And the issue about HDB for a lot of people is that there are actually a lot of people who lost their houses and they lost their deposit because they, like what was said, they break up in between. And this number was actually published online as well. The newspaper, the mainstream media published it. And this youngster, they say that, okay, just because they already lost their relationship, they still have to lose the money, then they have to work even longer to get back the money. And for those who actually have the money to get a second flat immediately, they face the penalty of having a delay application. That means they can't actually subscribe to the HDB and apply for it immediately. They have a waiting period of about a year or even more. So they say that just because of this, immediately I find another person to get married, I cannot marry them. I mean, you just look at how long does it take for the law minister to marry his second wife after divorcing his first wife? Was it more than a year or was it just a few months? If the law minister a few months can marry someone else, then why other Singaporeans cannot do the same? Is that fairness? Is that inclusiveness? Please leave your comments down below. Share this video. And therefore, this is called the authoritarian rule of law in Singapore.
Okay, Lim Tian. Last week, wow, big news in Singapore about big quarrel in Malaysia, you know, because the development minister of Malaysia said something like, oh, we need to learn from the best